A scorecard structure and data values can be built up manually or loaded via imports in Spider Impact. I'll start with a manual build by leveraging the manual org example structure I've already created. The first step is to build a scorecard by selecting Create Scorecard, providing a name like Scorecard, and selecting Create. An important note is that only one scorecard is allowed per organization. This becomes a critical thing to understand when importing. With that said, I immediately get taken to the next part of the hierarchy, which is perspective. I'll type financial and select create. The default is to create another perspective, but if I want to build the next level down, like objective, I'll need to select the perspective and then select new scorecard item. I'll give it a name like increase revenue and select create. Once again, the default is to create another similar item, but if I want to build the next level down, which is measure, I'll select the objective, select new scorecard item, and type my measure name, which is going to be training revenue. Before I select create, I'll note that there are a number of fields I can set at the measure level, like the scoring type and the calendar. All these fields will play a key role in the automated import that I'll review shortly. With that said, I'll select create. To finish off this very simple structure, I'll select done. Now, that only took a minute to build, but if I had a massive structure to develop, building it all manually might take a really long time. And this is where I would recommend stopping and exploring more efficient alternatives like importing. I can do that by selecting any part of the hierarchy and then selecting Send To, selecting Scorecard Import File, and that will create a CSV file. I'll open the file, increase the zoom, and expand all columns. I noticed that there are a number of columns included in the file, a good percentage of which are only applicable at the measure level. Each item in the hierarchy resides on its own row. This is very important to understand, as certain columns, like description, can only correspond to one item, such as a description for the increased revenue objective. I also noticed that at the measure level, 5 columns have been populated, even though I only took the time to load the name during the manual build. This is because certain fields like scoring type get automatically assigned, unless one is specifically chosen. If I wanted to quickly add another measure to the increased revenue objective, I can copy and paste the last row. If I just wanted to change the name of the measure, I can change it maybe to book revenue. And I'll leave all the other columns as is. If I wanted to create a new perspective, I could copy and paste from that row down. I'll change the perspective to customer, change the objective to improve customer satisfaction, and change the first measure to customer satisfaction survey. Since the measure is a percent, I'll change the data type to percentage. To avoid summing percentages, I'll change the aggregation type to average. Important note is that the spelling is critical. If I have a typo, the settings will fail. Moving on, if I expect the goal and red flag to be the same for every period out into the future, I can scroll to the first threshold value, and enter the red flag value, which is 90. And then enter 95 for the goal in the next column. Note that there is up to 7 threshold columns at the end, which is only applicable with one of the 11 scoring types, 3 color stabilize. To illustrate that, I'll change the name and scoring type to 3 color stabilize for the last measure. And I'll change that to the scoring type as well. Main thing is to make sure I don't have a typo with the spelling of the scoring type, because that's the spelling that the product is looking for. I'll also place values from 1 to 7 in each of the threshold columns. Assuming I'm done with the scorecard structure buildup, I'll save all of my changes. The question now is, how do I import that back into the system? I'll go back to Spider Impact. This time I'm going to select the automated org. And first note that a scorecard has yet to be defined. Since none has been defined, I have an option to import scorecard items. I'll select it. Select drag and drop new files here. Select the scorecard.csv file and select open. The scorecard item import dialog, I can adjust the column mappings. I can remove a mapping by clicking the right edge of a column like perspective and selecting X. To add a mapping, I would select a column like perspective and drag and drop it to the correct column. Another option is the ability to ignore rows. For instance, I could click ignore next to training revenue. This would then import all rows from the sample file except training revenue. And I see that row get grayed out here. I'll keep that change and click Run Import. I'll confirm the import was successful and select Done. And I now see that the scorecard structure has been created. Let's touch on the new items that I created within Excel. Under Financial, I have a new measure named Book Revenue. I also have a second prospective customer, and beneath that I have an objective with 2 measures. I'll select Customer Satisfaction Survey and select Edit to confirm that my changes to percentage and average have come across, along with the defaulting thresholds of 90 and 95. I'll select the next measure, 3 color stabilize here, and I'll confirm that the scoring type was set to 3 color stabilize, and also that my thresholds 1 to 7 were properly set as well. I'll select Done. Next, I'll show that a scorecard structure can be imported when one already exists. Spider Impact will add new items but will not modify existing ones. With that said, this should still be used with caution. To demonstrate this, I'll import the training revenue measure that I just ignored. First, I'll go back to Excel and remove everything but the header row and the training revenue measure. I'll then save those changes and go back to Spider Impact. Next, I've got to be careful as far as where I'm importing this measure to. So to make this clear, I'm going to minimize customer and I'm going to select the parent of that item, in this case increase revenue. With that selected, I'm now ready to import the measure that I ignored earlier. In the top right, I'll select the import icon. I'll then select scorecard items, click drag and drop new files, select the updated version of scorecard.csv and select open. I'll confirm just the training revenue measure is coming across and select Run Import. I'll then select Done. I'll confirm the measure was imported to the right place by expanding Financial and increase revenue. I see that the training revenue measure has been successfully added at the bottom. If I want to move that to the top, I need to select Edit and drag and drop it to the desired location. I'll then select Done. Next, I'll move on to updating measure values. Measure values can be updated manually or via a few different types of imports. I'll click on Training Revenue and show the first option, which is to update it manually. I'll select Update, and for the month of September, enter an actual value of 225,000. Give it a red flag of 200,000 and a goal of 220. I'll then click Save. As we saw with the scorecard structure, loading that manually was painless, but what if I had a full year of updates? That might be a great time to stop and explore more efficient alternatives like importing. In the top right, once again, I'll select the Send To icon. But instead of Scorecard Import File, this time I'll pick Measure Value Import File. I'll confirm that the automated org example structure is showing and click Next. If I wanted a load file for January through September, I'm going to need to change the defaulting dates here, and I'll just make that 1/1/2021 through 9/1/2021. Next, if I have both actual and threshold values to load, I need to switch from the default of dates in a header row to dates in a column. So I'll click that and select Next. On this last step, I can preview the file. I see that the September training revenue has already been loaded, along with the thresholds for the two measures at the bottom. If I'm okay with how this looks, I'll select Download Import File. To start, I'll increase the zoom and then expand all columns. Notice the measure import file contains much less columns than the structure file. Due to my wizard selections, I have one row for each measure for each of the first 9 months of the year. The name of the organization, measure, and its unique ID have also been included. I'll focus in on training revenue for this upload, and for the sake of time, simply copy the September actual and threshold values to January through August. Note that if the threshold values were always the same every period, it would have been smarter for me to define them at the measure definition level, and they would have automatically come across as we see for the two measures at the bottom. Assuming I'm done with the measure value buildup, I'll click Save. The next question is, how do I import this file into the system? If I go back to Spider Impact, I'll then select the import icon once again. This time I'm going to select measure values. I see that I have two options, simple import and advanced. I'll keep the default of simple import and select Next. Select drag and drop new files here. Select the file that I just worked with and click Open. I'll then select Run Import, confirm that it was successful, and click Done. Then refresh my screen. See in the chart for training revenues that values have been populated for January through September. I'll now move on to the second way to import measure values, which is the dates in a header row option that appeared as a default earlier. It's intended as the most efficient load of measures that only require actual value updates. To illustrate this, I'll select Customer Satisfaction Survey. It's a perfect candidate for the dates in a header row option since it contains defaulting thresholds for each period. Once again, I'll select the Send To icon in the top right and select Measure Value Import. I'll confirm the automated org, select Next, change my dates to the same time period I had before, and this time I'm going to keep dates in the header row as my defaulting option and select Next. At the last step here, I'll select Download Import File. Once again, I'll increase the zoom and double click to see all columns. Now, instead of having a row for each period for each measure, I now have just one row with the dates coming across in columns. It's a much easier file to work with. I'll now load the customer satisfaction survey, actual values year to date. For the sake of time, I'll just make that 95 for each period here. I'll leave the other two measures blank and I'll hit Save. Once again, I'll go back to Spider Impact, select Import, and measure values. This time I'll show the more powerful Advanced option, which turns the value import into a powerful 9-step wizard. I'll select Spreadsheet in this next step. Select Drag and Drop New Files here. Select the latest import file and select Open. On the fourth step, I have the ability to change the header row or ignore rows for this import, but I'll just select Next. Under Transformations, I could transform the data in a number of ways, but I'll just select Next. In the sixth step, I'll confirm that I'm importing values for 4 measures, most notably Customer Satisfaction Survey, and select Next. Under Destination Measures, I'll select Scorecard on the right and select Add. See that 4 measures were added. If that was an error, I can click on Edit 4 Measures and then delete the desired measures. In this case, I'll just select Close and Next. Under Mapping, I'll confirm that the 4 measures are being mapped correctly and select Next. The last step is extremely important. If I were to just select Run Import, the work that I just did would be a one-time process. If I select Save Import, I could give the import a name like Advanced and adjust the task owner. I could schedule the import timing, but I'll leave that as is, and select Save and Run. I'll select Done and refresh the screen. I'll confirm Customer Satisfaction Survey now has the actual entries of 95 for January through September. If I select Training Revenue under Financial, I still have the 225,000 values from the dates and rows upload from earlier. If I had changed those values in this latest upload within Excel, they would have been updated accordingly. Next, I'll show that there's a third way to import measure values via the home page. Before I do that, I'll select Book Revenue and determine its ID. I'll click on it and select the I or Info tab in the top right. I'll either make note of that mentally or jot down the value of 8,700. I'll then select Close and click on Home in the top left. I'll then select Update Measures. At the top, I'll select Import Measure Values. I'll stick with Simple Import and click Next. I'll select Dates in a column. Select Download Example to download a sample file, and then open it. I'll increase the zoom a bit and expand all columns. First thing I'll do is delete rows 3 through 6. And then I'll edit this for the book revenue measure that we looked at before, which was 8,700. For the value, I'll give it a value of 75,000. For the date, I'll give it an entry of 9/1/2021. and enter 50,000 and 70,000 for the threshold values. If I wanted to enter another period, I could copy and paste this row, maybe a value of 70,000 and a date of August, and keep the same thresholds there. I'll then click Save and return to Spider Impact. I'll select Drag and Drop at the bottom, select the metric value example file we were just working with, and click Open. I'll then select Run Import, confirm that 2 rows were successful, and click Done. I'll then go to Scorecards, expand Financial, the objective, and select Book Revenue. I now see that the actual and threshold values for August and September have both been populated here. I'm now going to leave the Scorecards world by selecting Initiatives and demonstrate the handling of initiative status updates. To illustrate updating a status manually, I'll choose the manual example task here. To update an item manually, I'll select Add Status Update. Apply an update date of 10/15, percent complete of 50, and money spent to date of 2,500. I'll then select Add. Now that was fairly painless, but if I had a lot of items to update, I would once again recommend using an import. The first step is to determine the ID. I'll switch to the automated task example, select the I tab again, and see the ID is 18023. In Excel, I then need to create an import file. I'll select Import, stick with the simple import, and select Next. I'll download the example file, open it, and increase the zoom again, and expand all columns here. Now here I'm going to delete the last 3 rows, and I'm going to change the ID to what we just looked at, 18023. Give it the same update date of 10/15/21, same percent complete, and the same amount of 2,500 as far as spent. I'll then click Save, go back to Spider Impact, drag and drop new files, and select the new instance here, Initiative Status Example, and select Open. I'll then click Run Import. Confirm that was successful, click Done, and confirm that a status update has been added for October 15th. Next, I'll demonstrate that data can also be imported from a database. I'll start by showing where import connections are defined in Spider Impact. I'll select Administration and then Import Connections. To define a connection to a database in the top right, I'll select Add Connection. At the top, I would need to select whether the database I'm connecting to is MySQL, SQL Server, Oracle, or DB2. For MySQL, I would need to provide the database host, port, name, user, and password. Once those parameters are entered, I would select Next, and then have the ability to name the connection and select the connection owner. For the sake of time, I'll just click on Cancel. And note that for previously defined connections on the right, I can either edit or delete that connection. I'll note that I can also define connections for SFTP or Google Sheets. But for now, I'll just focus on the database example. Once a connection has been defined, I can then build up a measure value import by selecting the Imports option. Under Measure Values, in the top right, I'll select New Import. I'll select Advanced and click Next. For choose a data source, I'll select Database and click Next. I'll confirm the database connection that was defined under Import Connections. And then I need to enter the appropriate SQL to bring back data from this particular database. In this case, select star from social sentiment. I'll then click Next. I'll click Next at the transform step. Need to make sure all columns are mapped properly. I'll drag measure ID down to match up with item type and then click Next. I'll select the MySQL org on the left and then improve brand awareness on the right and click Add. So I'll be looking to import data to these 4 measures. I'll select Next, ensure things are mapped properly, and click Next. I can then save the import. In this case, I'll just click Run. I'll confirm the import was successful and click Done.